This is Tomoko is Bay, and I'm back with some more House in Fata Morgana. And we have completed Reincarnation. Last time I played this, the story concluded. Basically, the ending was Jacopo, Morgana, and Maria. The three of them took a trip to their homeland. Morgana kind of accepted that she still wanted to have a future with Jacopo, although she still hadn't really she still hadn't really accepted Jacopo's love for her, but I mean she still wanted to be friends with him, so yeah, they went to their homeland together. But now we've moved on to short stories. I've read through one already. Okay, skip this because we already saw it. So we did Slow Killing Poison. So we're gonna move along to Defectives now and read through that one. Here we go. In the distant Hoi era, while the Tokugawa shogunate governed feudal Japan, Yukimasa Aida made his living far to the west, with little knowledge of what lay beyond the borders of his own native country. The land of the rising sun was an isolated nation, turning nearly everyone away save for traders from a few specific regions. And those restrictions applied equally to Japanese who had departed the country before they were put in place. Yukimasa was a third-generation emigrant, having never once set foot in his homeland. And for that reason, as a child, he held a great adoration for the glorious nation described by his grandfather. And he was particularly fond of the katana passed down to him by his grandfather. Though it bore no name, the blade had a curiously bestial glimmer that entranced Yukimasa at first sight. The katana had belonged to Yukimasa's grandmother, but she had passed away before he was born. His grandfather described her as a skilled swordswoman, slight in frame, but easily able to take down several men more than twice her size. After his grandfather passed and bequeathed unto him the blade, Yukimasa would from time to time see phantoms of a young woman drenched in blood. She had sharp, narrow eyes like him that looked more like his than even his parents. He felt almost as though his own reflection had stepped out of the mirror to cut him down, or like they were a pair of killers standing shoulder to shoulder. With each recurrence of the illusion, it took root even deeper into his soul, and Yukimasa grew ever more certain that one day he would cross over into her world. That he was simply holding in his true nature, that the beast dwelling within would break loose eventually. This tale, however, is of a time when he was still more man than beast. Defectives. In the wake of framing and killing 2 crewmates for smuggling Spanish silver, Yukimasa was having something of an identity crisis. On both occasions he had been smiling during the act, at least according to those who had seen him. If what they said were true, he wasn't conscious of it, but he didn't particularly doubt their words either. It was in all likelihood true. He had killed 2 men and enjoyed doing it. What unsettled Yukimasa most, though, was that his initial reaction was, I wonder what I'm going to become. Not a moment's concern for the men whose lives he had stolen. Once their still warm bodies hit the water, that was that. He held no nostalgia for the months they had spent out at sea together. He didn't care what kind of men they had been, or how much their families might grieve over the loss. Yukimasa wondered if that made him narcissistic. The lack of interest in anyone but himself seemed to fit the bill, but he didn't actually feel like he held himself in very high stature. He simply had this vague awareness of himself as a twisted, unsightly creature. On that day, the ship stopped at a small port town to replenish supplies and give the crew a few days to stretch their legs. They were still about 2 months out from Amsterdam, where his beloved awaited his return. What a hellish trip that was, a crewman, of Western origin, naturally, muttered. If I never have to hear the word smuggle again, it'll be too damn soon. The way the whole crew's got their cheeks clenched after that's about driven me mad. Not blaming you, I mean, just how it is. Yukimasa shook his head and gave the man a faint smile, and in his mind, he chuckled about how no one could seem to see through his mask. The blame lay with him for much more than just the tension on the ship. Real shit job you got stuck with there. I dunno if I'd been able to do it and keep a straight face like you did. Bet you're aching to let off some steam, ain't ya? You can be straight with me. I could certainly stand for some relief, yes. That much was true. However, Yukimasa meant it in a very different way. Come with me tonight, then. I know the perfect place to get you just what you need. The tanned seaman smirked, which was all Yukimasa needed to know what he was insinuating. He hesitated to come up with a response. Worried about Captain Asama? Don't. I ain't gonna tell him. Besides, it's not like he doesn't have needs too, you get me? Some of the crew knew that Yukimasa was romantically involved with the captain's daughter, and the man standing before him seemed to assume his hesitation stemmed from that. But Captain Asama would, as the seafarer had said, spend his time off satisfying his personal needs. That was just part of life on the sea. Everyone understood and no one considered it being unfaithful. Requiring a ship full of vigorous young men to save themselves for their partners, who they would often not see for months at a time, could in fact be considered a form of torture. There were a number of brothels scattered about the port town. For them, sailors were practically the ideal clients. A ship only stayed around for a few days to a week, meaning no time to get attached or cause other similar problems. About the only complaint a prostitute might have is that sailors tended to be quite pent up. They weren't the kind of client a new recruit could generally handle. Oh, clientele? Yeah. Why do they make it look like that's two words? It should be clientele. Okay, I don't know. They weren't the kind of clientele a new recruit could generally handle. That settles it. Tonight. Grab something to eat, and then we'll meet up at... Yukimasa forced a smile for the man, who had taken his silence as a yes. But he wasn't worried about Captain Asuma finding out or being unfaithful to Pauline. He simply wasn't sure how much he could trust the seaman's recommendation. And the last thing he wanted was to catch some kind of disease. Yukimasa was paired up with a skeletal girl with faded brown hair, which she had done up so much it only served to emphasize the lack of anything anywhere else on her body. This is your idea of the perfect place? He couldn't deny his disappointment at his assignment, who boasted absolutely nothing of what he sought in a woman. In fact, he was afraid he might snap her in half. As the other pairs heated up beyond the thin curtains, Yukimasa's interest plummeted. If a woman tried to seduce him, he would act in accordance with his base instincts, but otherwise, Yukimasa didn't have a particularly strong libido, so... You're not into this at all, are you? No, It's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you want to trade me for another girl. I used to have a few regulars, but these days I've got nothing. Sooner or later, they're gonna toss me out on my ass, and I'll have to resort to back alley quickies to make a living. You're the customer. You've got every right to complain to the manager about drawing the short straw. She sounded like a woman hanging from her last thread. I'm not going to cause any trouble for you. Well, aren't you, sweet? Your loss, she said with a snicker. I object to being called sweet, but anyway, I stand out more than most, so if I make a scene, it's more likely to escalate. You even went out of the way to explain yourself, so I object to your objection. But you do have a point. You're from the Far East, aren't you? Don't see many of your kind around these parts, so it's no surprise you draw attention. You know what? I've changed my mind. Don't ask for another girl. Clients like you only come around once in a blue moon, so I'd rather not let you go. Let's both avoid making a fuss and stay here together. You make it sound like I'm some kind of exotic animal. You're cute when you scowl. We can find out if you're an animal later, but you certainly are exotic. You're not even going to pretend this is a business exchange anymore, are you? I mean, why bother? I'm just the leftover scraps that nobody wanted. There was something oddly charming about her gleeful laugh, combined with the stream of self-deprecation, which would have been less of an issue for Yukimasa had he become physically intimate with Pauline, yet... because by comparison, this prostitute would look like nothing more than a couple dried twigs tied together. But he wouldn't be able to see Pauline for another couple months, and he was beginning to think this girl might just do the trick for now. Their ship was scheduled to stay in port for about a week. Although they would have to spend some time moving cargo on and off the boat, the stay was, by and large, a recreational one. It was early afternoon, and while much of the crew had gathered together to go drinking, Yukimasa was taking a relaxed walk along the shore. The stay was, by and large, a recreational one. It was early afternoon, and while much of the crew had gathered together to go drinking, Yukimasa was He was no less interested in exploring the unfamiliar port town as anyone else. But unlike them, he wasn't the kind of man whose first instinct was to go straight to the pub. They all jabbed at him for being stiff and tight-assed, none the wiser to the primal urges he kept buried within. And who would ever suspect it either? Who could watch him walk up to an elderly man fishing on the dock, ask how's the catch with a smile, and imagine a bloodthirsty beast lurked within? The man gave a lazy nod in return, adding, "Ain't half bad today." "You're a sailor, I wager, am I right?" the man said as Yukimasa made to resume his walk. "You are." "Well, a warning for you then, outsider. You'd do best to stay away from any back alleys after dark. It ain't safe at night, nohow." Yukimasa gave the man a half smile, feeling somewhat patronized by his warning. He was plenty capable of discerning where the dangerous parts of town were, and he was confident in his ability to defend himself if someone tried to attack. There's already been several victims. Yukimasa froze. As in, murders? Killed deader and dead. And they still ain't caught him either. Wouldn't want any of our guests to end up next on the list. Out of curiosity, how does he kill? The old man turned his gaze down, his face becoming a shadow against the clear blue ocean stretching out behind him. He dismembers them. Hard to imagine, eh? Cutting a person into a bunch of pieces. He don't discriminate neither. Man, woman, child, don't matter none. He's a sicko, a complete madman. And they ain't found no pattern to the victims neither. Nothing to say who he might be or who he might choose next. So don't think you're safe just because you're not from around here. Yukimasa could feel his vision narrowing, converging on a single point. Oh, he could imagine. He could imagine clear as the afternoon sky. And oh, how he wished that could be. Well, look who it is. Fancy running into you here. A woman's voice dragged him back to reality. He felt like he had just been pulled up from the bottom of the ocean, and when he turned to face her, he must have still looked a bit dazed, judging from the way she raised her eyebrow at him. Oh, let me guess. You don't recognize me, not all made up for work? It's me, the girl from yesterday. She held her hair up in an approximation of her previous night's hairstyle, to which Yukimasa gave an ah in feigned realization. So what are you doing wandering out here? Bored? Got nothing better to do? He wondered if the woman was even capable of being less blunt, especially considering he had technically been her client the night before. I'm just taking a walk. Not much to see out here. There's the ocean. Don't you get enough of that when you're out on it? I'll never tire of the sight of the sea. Is that so? She said, followed by a softer, slightly exasperated, I'll never understand, guys. But a few seconds later, she gave him a big smile. So hey, you're not busy. Why don't you come to my place? I can throw together a bare-bones little lunch. Again, I'm taking a walk. And bare bones is hardly a convincing sales pitch. I'm saying if you want a quality meal, pony up for some goods. Ah, so that was what she meant. Apathetic, but finding no reason to turn her invitation down, Yukimasa agreed to go along. I've taken a liking to you, she had said. Stop by whenever you've got the chance, at least until you have to take off. I can treat you even better than when I'm on the job, and free of charge. What do you have to lose? So that's exactly what Yukimasa did. Seeing her became part of his daily routine. And the more time they spent together, the more he learned about her. She had once been married and planning to start a family. but money troubles led to debt piling on, which led to her husband running out on her. And with the entirety of their debt on her shoulders, she had to start working, which was how she ended up at a brothel. As she told her story, Yukimasa showed a fair degree of sympathy, but took the whole thing with a grain of salt. If everything she said was true, she'd had a hard life indeed, but there was no guarantee it was. Yukimasa made certain not to be openly dismissive or skeptical, though, to play the good listener. There was one thing he could be certain of, though. He felt a tiny bit of solidarity in the woman's solitude. The sense she was missing something. The sense she had a hunger. The sense she had a hole that couldn't be filled. The sense that she was defective. You know, we get on pretty well, don't you think? Maybe you could, I don't know, take me as your mistress? She sounded like she was only playing around, but still he responded with, "It's not wise to pair two defectives together." "What's that supposed to mean?" she said with a scowl. Yukimasa's ship was to depart the following day, and that evening the woman asked him to stay the night, to which he was unsure how to react. "Don't you have work?" "I'll just say I wasn't feeling well. It's not like anyone wants me there." "But don't you need the—" "I can survive taking one day off. I want to be with you." And with that, he could come up with no further objections. Regardless of what he did, he would be heading back out to sea the following day, likely never to see the woman again. So rather than waste time debating her own life choices, it would be easier for everyone if he just let her do as she pleased. Tomorrow, none of it would be his concern after all. He agreed, and she gave him a big smile in response. "I'm going to make you a feast tonight," she said. "You're paying, though." Yukimasa wondered if, perhaps, what she wanted most was to play like they were a real family. That was probably it. What she was missing in her life wasn't love or romance, but someone to sit around the table and enjoy a meal with. But that raised a new question. What happened after she'd had her fun? She found someone to fill the hole in her spirit, but it was fake, and the hole wouldn't stay filled forever. Oh, I'm doing something terribly cruel to her, aren't I? There was nothing he could do about that anymore, though. Even if she were to ask him to stay, he didn't have that option. "May I ask you something?" he said. "Yeah?" "How did it feel when you lost your family, your sanctuary?" "You sure know how to go right for the heart." "I apologize." "I don't want to think about anything that might bring my mood down. If you want to know what it feels like, experience it for yourself. Find yourself a girl and get her to run off on you. Seemingly taking his silence for discomfort, the woman left out a soft laugh and said, "But I don't want you to have to go through that." Supper was a seafood stew. Hardly a feast, but there was a homely warmth to the meal. Something she had likely honed over the years. When a man is incomplete, missing a vital part of what makes him human, what becomes of him? Does he lash out? Does he lose the will to live? Does he forget what kind of man he is? Yukimasa didn't think he fit into any of those categories. In the middle of the night, Yukimasa silently slipped out of bed and made his way for the door. Wait! But he didn't make it 2 steps before the woman grabbed him by the sleeve. She must have been awake the whole time. There was no way she could have noticed him leaving otherwise. "Don't do this to me. I've had more than enough of waking up to an empty bed. And I'm not going to let it happen again. Not this time. You may think sneaking off without a word is the cleanest way to end things, but you're wrong. Stay until morning. Let me say a proper goodbye." "No, I wasn't." "You weren't what? Of course you were. I don't care if you think of me as free tale for the weak. You're just going to forget about when it's over. I'm using you for my own personal satisfaction too. But the one thing I won't stand for is you just up and disappearing on me. You're not the one being left behind, so you don't understand how worthless and pathetic that makes you feel. It hurts. It hurts so much more than anything else you could do. Don't leave me." That was probably what she wanted to say more than anything else. The loneliness that had created the hole in her heart was making waves, and this was the real desire that lay hidden in her words. She didn't want to be alone anymore. "I'm not leaving. I'll be back. There's something I wanted to give you, and I was just going to get it." "And what would that be?" "It's my way of showing gratitude." I think the word you're looking for is present? "Yes, that." Her eyes were locked with Yukimasa's. She was staring through the darkness in an attempt to ascertain how truthful he was being. After 10 or 15 seconds of glaring, she let him go. "I won't be long," he said with a smile. As he walked down the moonlit port, Yukimasa's mind raced. No one truly understands themselves more than superficially. Some say you know yourself best. Others say it's quite the opposite. The concept of the self is full of such uncertainties, contradictions. Yukimasa suspected he was suppressing himself within his self. So while he had a reasonable grasp on who his outer self was, his inner self was a complete mystery. And that fact sometimes sent a chill down his spine. Who was he? What did he want in life? Which self, which of his desires, was the real him? Self, 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 self. He felt sick. About 30 minutes later, he was back. Within seconds of him knocking on the woman's door, it was open. She must have been waiting there, anxious for his return. The woman met his eyes, gave him a pouty smile, and then slowly lowered her gaze. Her eyes gradually widened, shooting up and down as they did. I've never been very good about thinking of anyone other than myself. I consider myself proficient enough at conversation, but if I'm not careful, my mind always seems to drift back to myself instead of focusing on who I'm talking to. That said, I've spent a great deal of time thinking about you. The woman took a step back. Yukimasa followed. And I've concluded this is the best way for me to make you happy. She didn't even have time to let out a shriek. There was only the sound of steel slicing flesh, metal grinding against bone, as the nameless katana pierced the woman's breast. Her mouth flapped open and shut, while her eyes were held wide open, affixed on the man standing before her. Faint gasps escaped her lips and sputters. Perhaps she wanted to scream. Perhaps she wanted to cry and shout and say this wasn't what she wanted. But there wasn't enough strength left in her emaciated body to do either. As blood spilled down the sides of her lips, she mustered the last scraps of her strength. And with it, she forced out her parting words, carefully chosen and enunciated to ensure he heard every last one. You pitiful man. What kind of hopeless fool would throw their life away just to kill a worthless prostitute? She cursed him as her life slipped away. Yukimasa, however, let out a laugh and muttered, "Don't you worry. I still have enough control to not act sheerly on impulse." Hey, Yukimasa, you hear about that whore you been banging? She was killed last night, cut to pieces like the others. I swear, it's like trouble follows you wherever you go. Lord Almighty, stay away from me, man. I don't want to catch the attention of whatever evil spirit's taken a liking to you. That was probably best. He would be safer keeping his distance. Yukimasa gazed idly out at the port town as it faded out of view. He then turned toward the ocean, that vast, familiar blue expanse. The waves against the boat sounded vaguely like splashing blood. "Can I ask you something, Pauline?" Yukimasa said in the warm embrace of his sweetheart. Anything. What would you think if I were actually an unspeakably evil man? Huh? Where'd that come from? She asked with a smile, evidently assuming the question was in jest. Idle curiosity. Well, bad people come in all shapes and forms. What sorts of bad things would you do? How about committing murder? Deceiving people? The words that came from Yukimasa's mouth were not the ones he'd prepared to say, which came as a surprise even to him. Why had he not been able to say what he had wanted? What reason could he have possibly had? Did he not want to raise any suspicions? No, that wasn't it. Is being dishonest really evil? Sure, it's bad if you lie to cheat someone out of their money or cause them pain, but no one's perfectly honest with everyone they meet. I try to be straightforward and truthful as best as I can, but I'm sure I slip from time to time. So listen to me, Yukimasa. Pauline gave a wide, infinitely loving smile. Even if you had something to hide, something you're ashamed to tell me, that won't change how I feel about you. You've got nothing to worry about. Besides, I plan to be with you for years and years to come. You want to know what my life's dream is? I'd love to. My dream is to live out a long, quiet life with you. I don't need anything extravagant, just an ordinary life, slowly growing older, having 3, maybe 4 children. We'd never fight, and eventually, before I knew it, I'd be an old lady, thinking, it was an uneventful life, but it was the best I could have asked for. That's the life I want. And what about you? Now he understood. He didn't want to risk cracking the foundation she provided him, the sanctuary she formed around him. Yes, I too wish for a peaceful life with you. Okay, there was like literally no point to that story. Like, we already knew Yukimasa was a fucking crazy ass motherfucker. Like, we didn't need that story to like enforce that. Alright. Moving on to the painting's ramblings. Why, hello there, Giselle. Doing your rounds again? Such a diligent young lady you are. You could get away with cleaning this place once every couple decades and no one be the wiser. What? You're not Giselle? That's someone else? Oh, no, you're just the maid? And who am I, you ask? Well, this is quite the pickle. What on earth could have happened while I was dozing off? You think you're just a maid and you think you're the witch at the same time? You've forgotten just about everything, and I don't think anything I say is going to fix that. You do seem a bit mellower now and not so constantly miserable. Wasn't sure what to say to you before, or if I should say anything at all. So I didn't say much, out of consideration for you. Not that you could really tell from looking at me, I guess. If forgetting takes some weight off you, then maybe it's for the best. Not that I think you should forget, and not that I want you to forget about Michelle, but I won't blame you for choosing not to spend God knows how much longer agonizing over it. Nothing wrong with abandoning ship, especially considering how long you've spent on it. And hey, it hurt me too seeing you in so much pain, so we both come out on top here, I guess. What a kind painting, you say? Well, thank you kindly. But the truth is, I'm not nearly as upstanding a guy as people think I am. And it was us Bollingers that turned your life upside down and caused you all that misery and suffering. Yeah, I know. The first dumbfounded smile was testament enough. Everything I say is going in one ear and out the other, which means I'm free to say whatever I want. By the time tomorrow rolls around, you'll have forgotten all about the curious talking painting you chanced upon today. So I'll start with this. It's a huge relief to see you smiling again. It's not the smile of someone right in the head. I can see that much. But it's a lot easier on the eyes and the heart than how you were before. Like I said, I'm a real winner. I'm not particularly concerned about putting up appearances here. Call me heartless if you will, you wouldn't be wrong. I'm not going to pretend I'm some saint, but at the same time, I'm not going to play like I'm a cackling villain either. If there's one thing I don't want people to see, though, it's me looking weak. I'm the laid-back guy without a care in the world. That's who I want people to see when they look at me. Okay, wait. I'm trying to remember. The painting is, George, isn't it? Michelle's brother. I think that's right. My big brother was your standard cookie-cutter, you can count on me for anything kind of brother. I mean, that ended up not being the case, but he sure looked the part. And Michelle, he always looked up to Dee, went to him for everything, gave him all his love. Dee was tall and well-built, muscular. Everything about him screamed manly man. And I kinda admired that too, though not nearly as much as Michelle did. I became a painter in part because I didn't want to follow in my brother's footsteps. Not to say I don't like painting, I love it, but people weren't going to be inclined to compare us as often. I didn't have to be as fit as him, or as good at chess. I had my own thing to be good at, art. I couldn't beat him at his own game, so I beat him at mine. And my whole not a care in the world deal was probably, at least on some level, a shield against having to admit I couldn't compare. If I were a few years further apart, maybe I could have just had the same admiration and respect for him as Michelle. But there's not much getting past that boyish competitiveness when you're so close in age. I know I've been rambling at you for a while already, but would you mind sticking around a little longer? Great. I've got an old story I'd like to get off my chest. This is something I was planning to take to the grave, and something I don't think Giselle ever needs to know. But well, you said you're not Giselle anymore, and I'm already in the grave, so what the hell. I'm just gonna talk to myself for a bit here, and if you'd kindly forget anything you may overhear, that'd be lovely. Back before I became a painting, I was the head of the Bollinger family. Though I spent most of my time painting. It really wasn't the job for me, though. A guy who half-assed his way straight through life. So I left all the businessy stuff to my wife, Amy. Now she was a real capable girl. If she'd been born a guy, she would have made one heck of a diplomat. Possibly even caught the king's eye. Before we married, she'd had a bit of a fling with Dee, which she felt real bad about later. Probably didn't help that I had a tendency to bring it up from time to time. Not all the time, just occasionally. But that aside, she was a faithful, hard-working partner. Shit. It didn't take long for us to become known as the dope and his able bride. To which Amy would always interject, "George is a very capable man, thank you very much." Now that probably makes it sound like I just shoved all the work of running the house onto her, but in truth, she wanted the job. She quite enjoyed it, and who was I to complain? It also meant I didn't have to deal with one of the family's more significant dilemmas. Namely, my mother. Not to be crass, but Mom was not quite all there. She'd always been a bit of a nervous wreck, and it didn't take much to set her off, but it was what happened with Michelle that finally broke her. Mom had, I guess you could say, a very particular image of what she wanted Michelle to be, and he ended up not fitting that image. Now, you're probably thinking, that doesn't seem like such a big deal, but it is. I just can't tell you why. Michelle has to be the one to tell you. Anyway, some bad stuff went down, and at the end of it all, Mom was constantly hovering over the edge. Dad gave up on her entirely, and I just wasn't sure how to approach her, so I kept my distance. Amy was the only one in the family who would actively engage with Mom. So while she had betrayed me once, I had come to trust Amy again. We had a couple kids. I turned into a doting father, and life was swell. All my problems swept under the rug. Mom's condition, Michelle. I left it all to Amy and enjoyed a pleasant, carefree life. But then Giselle, or I guess you're just the maid now. Not long after Michelle died, my oh my, you really aren't Giselle anymore, huh? So back to my rambling. Michelle died, and I got furious at Dee over it. But I keep coming back to that. Who really deserved the brunt of the blame in that situation? It's nice and comfy to sit back and do nothing. You can throw blame around all you want. It wasn't your fault after all. You're not the one who killed him, you know? It wasn't long afterwards that Dee died too. Killed on the battlefield. I was told he died a very noble death, but I couldn't help but think he was in a hurry to escape. Listening to the news, I kept telling myself, I shouldn't have snapped at him like that. I shouldn't have blamed him. Dee had to choose between protecting Mom or protecting our brother, and he settled on Mom. He was too hard-headed to come up with a way to protect them both. Though even if he had, it was too risky. He served the church directly, and we were all under its thumb. If word spread that one of our own had supposedly sold his soul to the devil, that would be the end of the Bollinger family. I wouldn't have escaped unscathed either. Losing both of my brothers in quick succession crushed me, and as I started breaking down, it was, you guessed it, Amy who comforted me. It's terrible what happened, but it's not your fault. That was around when I began sensing something was off. I mean, she'd had a thing with Dee. You'd expect she would have been bawling her eyes out right alongside me. So why on earth was she so calm? But I didn't press her on it. I knew I wouldn't get an answer even if I did. And I also didn't have much of a right to question Amy when I was pushing all my problems onto her. Doubly so knowing that opening my dumb mouth was what had done this to Dee in the first place. Before long, we went back to our normal routine. Wait, I don't get it. So him blaming Dee for killing Michelle led to Dee dying on the battlefield? That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, whatever. About 8 years after Michelle's death, Mom was gone too, and the Bollinger family was down to me, Amy, and our 2 sons. I had started teaching the boys how to paint, and I loved every minute of it. And then one day, I started feeling unwell. My fingers would get kind of tingly, such that holding a brush for long periods of time would hurt. So gradually, my time spent both teaching and painting dwindled. and even leaving the manor became difficult. At first, I just thought it was a little strange, nothing to be worried about. But then it started getting real bad, and I'd be stuck in bed for days at a time. We called a doctor to look at me, but he couldn't find anything wrong. Amy said I must be overworking myself, and she made me these nice hearty meals hoping to bring back my energy. But my condition only got worse. Eventually, I started losing my appetite. But Amy, she insisted I eat anyway, or I would never get better. So you know what I did? I tossed out the meals she made when she wasn't looking. I sent my younger boy out to town to buy me food in secret. And for a while, I ate that instead of Amy's meals, making sure it looked like nothing had changed. Wait, why would he do that? And after a week or two, the tingling in my fingers started going away. Wait. Are you telling me Amy was trying to kill him? I could only laugh. Laugh and laugh and grit my teeth, then cry my eyes out. I made a life with this woman, trusted her, and she goes out and does this. Anger and sorrow were drowned out by raw heartbreak. Well, I mean, we saw Amy's true nature by what she did with Michelle, so... yeah, Amy's fucked up, dude. My firstborn, he was getting to be about the age he could take over, which is why I had used my younger son to run errands for me. I couldn't be sure the two weren't working together. I was at a total loss. Well, what are you supposed to do when your wife's trying to poison you to a slow death? Even now, I'm not sure what the right course of action in that situation would have been. Maybe I could have banished her, had her punished, but remember, I was only head in name. She handled everything. There was no way I would have been able to pick up the pieces after throwing her out. And if my suspicions were right, and my older boy was in on it too, getting rid of Amy wouldn't have solved anything. What then? Spend the rest of my days living in fear of my own family? I was, by that point, worn pretty thin, both physically and emotionally. Every thought led me to the worst possible outcome. I couldn't, for the life of me, come up with a workable solution. Eventually, I got it into my head that it was punishment, that I deserved it. Obviously, what Amy was doing wasn't right, but my hands weren't exactly clean either. Maybe Mom could have recovered if I had looked after her. Maybe Dee would still be alive if I had put myself in his shoes instead of just snapping at him. Maybe if I had given everyone the care and attention they deserved, Michelle wouldn't have had to die. Burying your head in the sand doesn't absolve you of responsibility, and when I finally realized how great a sin inaction was, it was far too late. I'm dumb, short-sighted, and I hated myself for not figuring that out sooner. It should have been stupidly obvious what my action and inaction were doing to the people around me. I should have seen all of this coming. Yeah, Amy had betrayed me, but she wasn't the only one guilty of that. When I was going through Michelle's stuff after his death, I came across a painting that had been torn to shreds that I had made. By refusing to use my head, I had done something that denied his identity. And he left this world still carrying the pain that I had caused him. By the time I had come to that conclusion, I wondered why I was even alive at all. I couldn't blame anyone for wanting me dead. So I started eating Amy's meals again, knowing good and well it would likely kill me. I didn't stop sending my younger boy out though, just not for food. I also strongly encouraged him to move out and become a court artist. Then I started painting again. It was going to be my final piece. Every day, the tingling in my hands spread a little farther. My breathing grew a little more labored. I was afraid I might not finish while I was still able to get out of bed, but I somehow managed. It was the most harrowing experience I'd had painting something in my entire life. True to her facade, Amy stayed at my side until my last breath. She held my hand tight, giving me a strained smile. It didn't occur to me at the time, but Amy always seemed to be smiling, no matter what. In a way, it's kind of impressive how she managed to keep up the loving wife act while simultaneously loading me up with poison. Tell me, Amy, how deep did your poison flow? When you were looking after Mom, did you talk about Michelle? Knowing you probably figured out he was still alive. And I bet you read his final letter to her. It was you who pushed her to set everything in motion, wasn't it? There were so many things I wanted to say, but I stayed my tongue and made these my parting words. I loved you so much, Amy. So I ask you this: keep my last painting in memory of me. I have no idea if she actually did as I requested, but the last thing I saw before I passed was her nodding, a smile on her lips. The paint I used to make it, I mixed with a special something I had my younger boy go out and buy for me. A substance that, according to what I was told, slowly dissolves into the air, making it toxic. And it has some sort of reaction with the paint as well, turning it almost black. Oh, so that's the painting that he became. Okay. I'm quite proud of how it turned out, if I do say so myself. It was a gorgeous landscape painting. Sorry for rambling at you for so long. That's the end of my story. Were you even listening to me? What? You have to go clean the fireplace? Well, alright. Don't let me keep you. Just please make sure you forget everything by tomorrow, alright? I'm counting on you. I know. Why even say anything, right? I wanted to tell someone. I just don't want anyone to actually know about it. The human heart's a big ball of contradictions like that, you know? You don't? Oh, okay. Well, see ya. It'll be another few decades before you come by again, I imagine. And when you do, will it be our first time meeting again? Will you even be able to hear my voice anymore by then? Maybe it'd be best if I forgot everything too. Who knows? So long, maid. And take care. When an angel comes to judge me, how will his scales tilt? Towards forgiveness or towards reckoning? But you know, I don't want it to be an angel who makes that decision. No, you don't have to be an angel. You don't have to be an angel at all. Alright, I think that's gonna be it for tonight. Yeah, I think it's gonna take a while to get through these, because there's 18 of these stories. And, I mean, it takes probably 40 minutes or so to read through each one, so... I mean, yeah, when you apply that to... Now it's, what, 15 stories we have left to read? I mean, that's gonna be multiple hours, so yeah, it's gonna take you know, several streams before we get through all these. But anyway, alright, yeah, I will, I should be back tomorrow to stream. I guess I'll do Final Fantasy VII Remake again. So, alright, good night.